Beauty people, today what I want to show you is the actual application, how to apply nail tips as I told you in the last video. And this is my lovely mom who has willingly decided to be my model. So the first thing that we're going to do is size up the tips for the fingers that I want to apply tips on, and I'm only going to do a couple of fingers. And in this video, I'm showing you how to apply nail tips, how to blend them in. This was once, as I said, a state board procedure, no longer state board. Now, normally when you're working on someone's nails, as far as artificial enhancements, even with manicures, you work on the person's least dominant hand. But in this video, I'm doing my mom's right hand because I didn't want to compromise the length of her nails on her left hand. The nails on her right hand was a little shorter already. So if you remember, I told you that you want to do groove to groove when you're fitting the tip. So it's not fitting. So I think for the two fingers that I chose, I did a number 1 and a number 2. So remember, the lower the numbers are with your nail tips, the larger the tips are. And these particular tips go from 0 to 9, but normally tips go from 1 to 10. 1 being the largest, 10 being the smallest. So we're going groove to groove. Brush on resin. I don't know why it wasn't showing up clear on the camera. But this is Back Scratcher's Glass Glaze brush on resin. It's amazing. It's been around for years. Back Scratchers is actually, there's a buffer, 100 over 180 grit. File, 100 over 180 grit, and my nail tips. But what I was going to say is Back Scratchers is actually been around, I don't know, from what I know of it, at least 15 years, maybe longer than that, because they were around before I started teaching. So their company is the one, or the first company that I knew of that did dip acrylics. So all this dipping acrylics now with the powder and the resins, Back Scratchers was doing that over 15 years ago, which means they were doing it longer than that, because I hadn't heard of it until I started teaching over 15 years ago. So I've been teaching for 18 years now, so it's been well over 20 years. Now what I'm showing you is I'm shaping my mom's nails up with the file. Get in the habit of not using your fingers to wipe the dust off. And the reason why I tell you that is because when you're doing acrylics and you use your fingers to wipe the dust off, you're actually putting oils back into the nail. So get in the habit of using a lint-free wipe or paper towels. So what I did was I brushed the resin inside the well of the tip, and remember I'm using full well tips for demonstration purposes. If you're doing acrylics, most likely you'll use half well or no well tips with the smile line. So this whole procedure would be obsolete except learning how to glue the tips on. So the tip is being held up, and then I'm pressing it down onto the nail to avoid any openings on the nail so that no water can get through and no bacteria poo, none of that. I slightly rock it to spread the glue across, or resin, which in this case I'm using resin. And that's how it should look. So now I'm going to brush glue, I'm That's all right. Glue, I'll say, but it is resin. I'm going to brush that in the well of the tip. Now remember what I told you in the last video. You can apply it directly onto the natural nail, slightly above the free edge of that person's nails, and glue the tips on that way. Some people may do it that way. I just find it better to do it on the tip. You have it straight up, you come to the nail, and then you press it down. Then you slightly rock from side to side, and then that should seal the nail tip down. So after I rock it and seal it down onto the nail, then we're good to go. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip down the length using my tip cutters. And next time, if I can remember, I'll show you how to cut nail tips with the toenail clippers. Because it is possible, you just have to do it carefully. And I've been doing it that way for years. If I don't have tip cutters, I use toenail clippers. Now tip cutters, some people don't know how to cut with tip cutters. For me, I just kind of hold on to the tip before I clip it so it doesn't pop all over the place. There's no reason why tips should be flying all over and hitting you in the eye and hitting your client in the eye. You just cut it carefully. You ask your client around about what length you want the tips to be, and you cut them down carefully. Let's see. I'm trying to think, is there anything else I want to tell you guys about nail tips? I think I covered it all in the last video. Oh, that's what else I wanted to tell you guys. Once you cut the nail tips down as far as filing, I'm sure you know this. On the natural nails, usually you file corner to center to avoid shredding a person's natural nail plate. But when you're filing an actual plastic nail tip, it's okay to file side to side. You don't have to go corner to center. So I cut them down to a decent length. Now this is me personally. Once I cut them down, I file them, I shape them, and it's called leveling at the seam. So in other words, where the line that separates the tip from the natural nail, you want to blend that down with the file to make it flush with the nail plate. So in other words, when I say flush, that means it's blended with the nail plate so you don't see a separation. So if you notice my file, I know it may be hard to see, but my file is at a 45-degree angle. So I'm really focusing on filing the tip part, and I'm not shredding her natural nail at all. So I'm blending down the nail tip so it can become blended with her natural nail. And then once I do that, I apply glue over the seam just to kind of fill it in. And now if someone wears just nail tips, because I've had that question asked before, can I just wear the nail tips? Well, believe it or not, I know a couple of people who actually did just wear nail tips, but they cut them down so short to where they wouldn't break off. Usually if you just wore the nail tips like this, they do break off because there's nothing strong enough on top of the tip to keep it on. So the next video, well, I'm going to talk to you guys a bit about fabric wraps, and that's including silk, linen, fiberglass. And then I'm going to demonstrate silk wraps on my mom again. But that would be called a silk overlay. So even, or fiberglass overlay, you can put fabric wraps over nail tips and that would keep them on rather than just nothing. If you wore just the nail tips like this, you would have to keep them really short so they wouldn't break off. So I'm blending, blending, blending. And then what I wanted to show you is when you're blending or filing nail tips, this is even when you're doing acrylics, you want to turn your client's hand away where you can see their view. So the first time when you saw me shaping her nails, I'm seeing from my view. But when I turn the hand like this, I'm seeing from her view what she would see when she gets in her car, when she's driving. So you always want to make sure you turn the hand backwards so that you can even out and truly see if the nail tips are even. Because when I turn the hand back around towards me, it's automatically going to look straight, but it may not truly be straight. So this is the finished product where I put the glue, I buffed at the seam, and now they're leveled in with the nails. And there you have it, guys. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I appreciate your support. So I want to thank my mom here for being my model. And thank you guys so much for watching. Tell them bye, Mom.
Bye.
Thank you so much, guys, for watching my videos. God bless you. Bye.